He found a bank vault at the bottom of a lake. What was inside was priceless. A drought lowered this lake for the first time in 80 years, revealing a lost town at the bottom. A diver decided to explore it, but he didn't find a house. He found a sealed bank vault, and when he finally forced the door open and saw what was inside, he didn't call the police. He called a museum. But before we start our story, make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already, and hit that notifications bell so you won't miss any of our new stories. The Miller Valley Reservoir had a secret. For 80 years, it held the ghost of a town beneath its quiet surface. The town was flooded in the 1940s, a necessary sacrifice to bring water and power to the growing region. An entire community gave up their homes. They watched as the valley of their ancestors slowly disappeared beneath the rising water. The town of Miller Valley was erased from the map. It became a memory, a local legend. Now, that legend was coming back to life. A record-breaking drought was choking the land. The reservoir's water level had dropped lower than anyone had ever seen, and for the first time in generations, the ghost was showing itself, the foundations of old houses, the outline of a forgotten main street, the stone steps of a schoolhouse that led to nowhere. They emerged from the receding water like the bones of a long-dead leviathan. For local diver Alex, this was the opportunity of a lifetime. Alex wasn't a treasure hunter. He was a history enthusiast. His own grandfather had been one of the last children to leave Miller Valley. He grew up on stories of the town, stories of the general store, the summer picnics, the vibrant community that now lay in a watery grave. He wasn't looking for riches. He was looking for a connection to his own past, to the world that had vanished beneath the waves. One cool October morning, he loaded his gear onto his small boat. He motored out to the center of the shrunken lake. He put on his scuba gear and slipped over the side into the cold, murky water. The silence was absolute. Sunlight struggled to pierce the green depths. As he descended, the ruins began to take shape around him. He swam through the skeletal remains of a family home. He passed the rusted chassis of a 1930s Ford. It was a haunting, beautiful, and deeply sad place. He spent an hour exploring the main street. He was documenting everything with his underwater camera. He was about to ascend when he saw something out of place. Further down the valley, away from the main cluster of buildings, stood a small structure. It wasn't a house. It was a windowless block of solid concrete. While the other buildings had crumbled, this one was almost perfectly intact. A heavy, rusted steel door was set into its face. What is that? Alex thought. It wasn't on any of the old town maps he had studied. It looked like a bunker or an old bank vault. He swam closer. His heart began to beat a little faster. The steel door was immense. It was sealed shut by 80 years of rust and pressure. He ran his gloved hand over its cold surface. There was no handle, no keyhole, just a thick metal slab designed to keep people out. An intense curiosity gripped him. What was so important that it needed to be locked away like this in the middle of nowhere? He returned the next day, and the day after that, he brought tools. A hammer, a chisel. Nothing worked. The seal was too strong. On his fourth attempt, he brought a heavy, 4-foot-long crowbar. This was his last chance. If this didn't work, he would have to give up. He swam down to the vault, the heavy crowbar in his hands. He wedged the crowbar in deeper. He took a deep breath from his regulator. He gave a final, desperate heave. There was a loud, wrenching screech. The 80-year-old seal broke. The thick metal door moved. It was only an inch, but it was enough. He worked the crowbar back and forth, slowly widening the gap. A feeling of trespassing washed over him. He was the first person to enter this place since 1946. He switched on his powerful underwater flashlight. The beam cut a brilliant white cone through the darkness. He swept it across the small room, and he froze. His mind simply could not process what he was seeing. He wasn't in a vault full of money. He wasn't in a secret military bunker. He was in a museum, a shrine. Shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, and on those shelves, perfectly preserved by the cold, dark, oxygen-poor water, were the memories of an entire town. His light beam fell on the first object, a mannequin. It was wearing a beautiful, old-fashioned wedding dress. Its lace was perfectly white. He was so stunned he almost dropped his flashlight. What was this place? He slowly panned his light across the rest of the room, and the scale of the discovery began to sink in. He was looking at a time capsule. the town's final, heartbreaking farewell. He slowly panned his light across the rest of the room. The scale of the discovery began to sink in. This isn't a vault, he thought. It's a memory. It's a ghost. His light moved to the next shelf. He saw stacks of school yearbooks. He opened one. The pages were stiff, but the ink was perfect. The faces of the students smiled back at him from another age. They were children who were now grandparents, or were long gone. On another shelf, he saw a child's small wooden toy car. Next to it sat a stack of sealed letters tied together with a faded ribbon. A small, handwritten sign was propped against them. It read, "To the future, from the families of Miller Valley." Every family had written a final message, a letter to a future they would never see, from a home they were about to lose. It was a collection of goodbyes. Alex felt a profound sense of reverence. He was a guest in this sacred place. His light continued to explore. He saw a trophy from the town's baseball team, a collection of local newspapers, their headlines announcing the end of the war. He knew then what he had to do. This didn't belong to him. He motored back to shore, his hands steady, his purpose clear. He didn't call his friends. He didn't call the news. He looked up the number for the County Historical Society. He called a woman named Dr. Eris Thorne, the lead historian. "My name is Alex," he said, his voice quiet. "I think I found something in the reservoir, something you need to see." The news of the discovery was kept secret at first. A small, dedicated team of historians and conservationists worked with Alex. They carefully removed every single artifact from the underwater vault. Each item was a treasure. Each piece told a story. Dr. Thorne confirmed what Alex had suspected. The townspeople of Miller Valley knew they were losing everything. The dam was a project for the greater good, but it meant their homes, their history, would be drowned. So they made a plan. As a final, defiant act of preservation, they chose to save not their money, but their memories. They used the old standalone bank vault to create an unofficial time capsule. Each family contributed one thing that mattered most. They sealed the heavy steel door one last time, a week before the water began to rise. They had sent a message in a bottle into a sea of time. The cold, dark, oxygen-deprived water had been the perfect guardian. It had kept their final day pristine for 80 years. The most precious artifact was the film reel. The historians worked for weeks to carefully restore the delicate film. When it was ready, they gathered in a small screening room. Alex sat in the front row. The projector whirred to life. Black and white images flickered on the screen. It was them, the people of Miller Valley. There was no sound, but the images spoke volumes. They were sad, but they were also resilient. The film ended with a single long shot. The entire town was gathered on a nearby hill. They were watching the valley below. A final, silent goodbye. Alex's discovery didn't make him rich, but it gave the entire region its history back. The artifacts were put on display in a new permanent museum exhibit called the Miller Valley Time Capsule. It became a local sensation. People came from all over the state. Grandchildren came to see their grandparents' faces in the high school yearbook. They came to read the sealed letters, their family's last words from a lost home. The wedding dress was the star of the exhibit, a symbol of love and hope preserved against the odds. Alex often visited the museum. He would watch as a new generation connected with the town lost beneath the waves. He didn't find gold or cash in that cold, dark vault. He found something infinitely more valuable. He found a story of a community that refused to be forgotten, a story he was able to bring back into the light.